All right, we got 5 minutes on the clock. What's your name, dear?
I am Jennifer K. Hill, CEO of OptiMatch, and the podcast is regarding consciousness.
All right. What's one thing that you think podcasters need to hear from our conversation today?
I think that the art of asking the right questions is the thing that all of us need to learn. And if anything is teaching us this is AI. We all know, if any of us have played around with ChatGPT, that the responses we get are only as good as the prompts we ask. And I actually was just talking to Deepak Chopra and Don Hoffman on an interview series we've done of about 20 podcasts over the last 4 years. And one of the topics that came up is we've been working on quote unquote solving the hard problem of consciousness. So many people ask, what's the meaning of life? What is life made up of? And as we were discussing on that podcast, we said, well, the problem is, and this is more quantum physics, we're asking questions from the context of space time. So you're going to get answers that are confined to that. Well, so too as we as podcasters, if we're asking questions from the context of old paradigms, we're not going to say anything new. We're not going to innovate. We're not going to be able to monetize or scale. And yet, much like a ChatGPT prompt, if we can ask the right prompt and the right question that's never been asked before, you're going to elicit responses that are going to spark your audience's interest and help these podcasts go viral.
Yeah. So give me an example of maybe a good question to ask versus maybe like, how'd you get started? As podcasters, we typically go, how'd you get started? What did you learn? What did you fail? What's a good book? So what questions should we be asking?
What matters to you most in life is one question you could ask.
So good, right?
What does life mean to you? What is the meaning of consciousness to you? I mean, when I'm asking, I will tell you one of my secrets as a podcaster. I go into a very reflective state right before I go on. One of my teachers, who actually you need to connect with him, David Guillaume, has literally my favorite podcast I've ever listened to. It's called Weekly Energy Boost. And his podcast gets millions and millions of downloads. They're one of the highest rated one in spirituality. And David's been a mentor of mine for about 5 or 6 years. And he told me years ago, he speaks on a lot of stages. He says, Jennifer, every time before I go to podcast or do any sort of speaking gig, I say, I only want to receive energy from source, from like divine wisdom, like that inspired question, that thing that lights you up and lights the audience up. He said, I don't want to take energy from the audience, because if I'm sitting here and trying to look good and do the looking good, doing the normal thing, then that's just going to lead to the same rigmarole, the same questions, the same thing done over and over again. And I think the thing that each one of us resonates with is, what's something we've never heard before? What's a question we've never been asked? And I will say, one of my greatest gifts is every time I interview somebody, I'll ask them a question. They'll just say, wow, I've never actually considered that. And how you do that is a technique I learned from another friend of mine, Arthur Samuel Joseph, called deeper listening. When we listen for what is the question that the audience wants to hear the answer to, not our little puny brains, Josh or Jennifer, are sitting here doing the interview, but what is the question in the consciousness of humanity that everybody wishes it's on the tip of their tongues? Ooh, if I had the answer to that, that would be juicy. So that's how I approach it.
Wow, that's really amazing. What is the deepest question that you're working on in your brain right now?
How can I help human beings connect in a meaningful way? As somebody who was bullied as a child and bulimic and suicidal, the gift that I wish I could give every single person, Josh, is the ability to feel safe and connect with another human being. So I'm always curious, and that's the gift of asking great questions. I was at a party this week, and it was a holiday party, and there was this young kid there in his 20s who was kind of sitting by himself and wasn't talking to anybody at the party. And I asked him a question. I had a feeling he was scientifically minded. So I asked him something about quantum physics. An hour later, he was lit up. We're talking about the future of his life and writing articles on Medium and how he should start a podcast. And just by asking somebody a really meaningful question, you can not only change your listeners' lives, you can also change the lives of the person you're talking to.
Jennifer, you are amazing. Where could people go to find out more about you and to listen to your podcast?
So regarding consciousness is the podcast. You can follow me on YouTube at Jennifer K. Hill, or Google me, Jennifer K. Hill, and everything pulls up on me there.
Awesome. And we did that all in 5 minutes. I love you. You stand by 1 second and we'll continue this chat. Everyone, have a great day. Thanks for tuning in to Podcast Host Army.